I'm a computer repair technician. Lately, to drum up more business, I've been handing out flyers in nearby neighborhoods for days. The flyers are pretty simple. Free on-site computer repair. 24/7. On call. It really worked. Repair requests started pouring in. But tonight, I got a call from a dead person. Alright. Story time. My first call today was from a woman in her 30s. Very attractive. I was instantly captivated. A computer that should have taken 15 minutes ended up taking me half an hour to fix. At 9:30 p.m., just as I was about to close up, she called again. Mr. Chen. You're not asleep, are you? My computer seems to have a problem again. Could you come take a look? Her voice was lovely, and there was no way I could refuse. I quickly asked. Oh. Ms. Wang. You're still up? What's wrong with the computer? She replied. I don't know exactly what's wrong, but it's really annoying to use. The mouse keeps jumping around. I see. I said. Maybe I didn't fix it properly this morning. Wait for me. I'll be right over. Okay. Thanks for coming so late, she said. No trouble at all. I'll call you when I get there. Could you open the main door for me? Sure. See you soon, she responded. After hanging up, I felt a strange excitement. Going to a beautiful woman's place so late to fix her computer, anyone would let their imagination run wild. I thought I looked pretty good. And I work out often, so I'm in decent shape. Maybe something would happen tonight. The woman's name was Wang Qing. When I fixed her computer this morning, I noticed a child's bed in her home. Besides that, I didn't see anything related to a man. I guessed Wang Qing was divorced and raising a child on her own. Women like that are usually starved for affection, silently bearing the pressures of life. After a long time, it's understandable that they might develop extreme thoughts. I completely understood this and was willing to soothe her empty soul with pure love. At 9:40 p.m., I arrived at Wang Qing's building. The main entrance had a security system, so I called Wang Qing. Ring. Ring. The call connected, but no one answered. This made my mind wander again. Wang Qing probably didn't expect me to come so fast. Maybe she was still showering. So I stopped calling and sat patiently on the steps by the entrance, waiting for her to call back. 10 minutes later, Wang Qing called. She apologized, saying she was showering and didn't hear the phone ring. My guess was right. Wang Qing lived on the 12th floor. Apartment 1201 on the east side. It was a one-apartment per floor layout, separated from the west apartment by a long, often locked corridor. As I went up in the elevator, I thought I smelled a faint metallic odor. I'd smelled it this morning too. But this wasn't the time to dwell on it. I couldn't help but glance at the black high heels on the shoe rack by her door. Suppressing my rising excitement, I pressed the doorbell. I expected Wang Qing to be waiting at the door. But after pressing the doorbell several times, there was no sound from inside. Had she forgotten I was coming in the minute it took me to get up here? I found it strange. And after a few more presses, I shouted directly through the door crack. Ms. Wang. Ms. Wang. I'm at the door. After shouting, I pressed my ear to the door and listened carefully. Still no sound inside. Could she be messing with me? She had just hung up the phone a minute ago. Thinking this, I pulled out my phone and called Wang Qing again. As the ringing started, there was finally movement from inside. Wang Qing's phone ringtone clearly echoed. Very close. As if right behind the door. Ms. Wang. I hear your phone ringing. Don't tease me in the middle of the night. Please open the door. The phone ringing continued to reverberate in the elevator hall. And the motion-activated lights flickered, making me inexplicably nervous and annoyed by Wang Qing's childish behavior. But then I thought, Wang Qing didn't seem like the type to do something like this. Could something have happened? She had just showered, so her slippers would be slippery. Could she have slipped and fallen, knocking herself out while coming to open the door? The more I thought about it, the more plausible it seemed. And it might explain why her phone was right behind the door. I panicked, quickly hung up, and prepared to call the police. Just then, the door, which had been silent, suddenly made a sound. Click. Creak. With the sound, the door slowly opened a gap about 2 palms wide. Ms. Wang. I stopped what I was doing and called out. The gap was pitch black. I couldn't see anything. Just as I was about to reach out and pull the door open, the motion-activated light in the elevator hall inconveniently went out. My outstretched hand froze in midair, and an instinctive fear rose in my heart. I quickly stomped my foot hard, and the light came back on. But before I could even sigh in relief, a pale face suddenly peered out from the door crack. I stumbled back in fright, falling to the floor, and scrambling on all fours directly to the elevator. When I looked back at the door crack, the face was gone. I gasped for air, quickly stood up, and pressed the elevator button. I've never been particularly brave, so I couldn't handle this kind of scare. There was no way I was fixing this computer tonight. I swore I hadn't imagined it. That face was very real. And thinking back, it looked more like a child's face. Was it Wang Qing's child? Regardless of whether it was her child or not, I had lost the courage to stay there. Unless Wang Qing turned on the lights now and came out to tell me it was just a prank. I stood in the corner, my eyes darting between the elevator floor numbers and the door crack. 10. 11. 12. Ding. The elevator finally arrived. I lunged in, pressed the first floor button, and furiously slammed the door close. From this angle, I couldn't see the apartment door, which made me feel much safer. As the elevator door slowly closed, I breathed a sigh of relief. But then, as if possessed, I leaned out and looked at the apartment door again. Just that one glance sent shivers down my spine, and my legs gave out, leaving me sprawled on the elevator floor. The elevator doors finally shut, but the scene I had just witnessed kept replaying in my mind. That pale little face had reappeared, half of it pressed against the doorframe. That was terrifying enough. But what was even more horrifying was that on the floor right beneath the door, Wang Qing's face was also visible, half exposed, covered in fresh crimson, her eyes wide open and meeting mine. And the angle of that face was completely unnatural, like a disembodied head placed on the floor. I couldn't bear to think about it anymore. When the elevator reached the first floor, I scrambled out of the building. I wanted to just ride away, but the cool night air outside instantly cleared my head. This situation felt very wrong. Everything that had just happened was too abnormal. Thinking about it, it all seemed like a prank. Could someone really have decapitated Wan Qing in such a short time? Then placed her head by the door to scare me. And that pale little face. Clearly a child's. This must be a prank Wan Qing and her daughter were playing. Trying to scare me. Although I didn't know why she would do it. It was definitely going too far. My face burned with shame as I thought of how foolish I must have looked. Then I remembered that when I was at Wan Qing's place this morning, I noticed she had installed several cameras, including 2 in the elevator hall, covering every angle. I had been curious and asked her about it then. And she just said it was for safety. So I didn't think much of it. But now, who installs so many cameras just for safety? All my reactions just now must have been recorded. Would she upload them online to get views? Was that her real motive? The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. My fear completely vanished. I wanted to go back upstairs right now and confront her. The main building door was already locked. This time, I didn't call her. Instead, I used the intercom system to dial her apartment number. After some static, the intercom connected. In that instant, all my previous guesses were confirmed. If something had really happened, how could someone answer the intercom? Hello? Ms. Wang. Do you find this amusing? Without giving her a chance to speak, I confronted her directly through the intercom. Do you know how much harm this has caused me? If I had a heart condition, that scare could have caused irreversible damage. I don't know why you're doing this, but I must tell you. If any surveillance footage of me appears online, I will pursue legal action against you. The response was silence. But I could hear faint breathing on the other end of the intercom. After about 10 seconds, as I grew increasingly impatient, a voice finally came through the intercom. Oh. I forgot about the elevator hall surveillance until you reminded me. Thank you. The intercom hung up. And I froze. The voice wasn't Wan Qing's. It was a man's. How could this be? Were all my guesses wrong? Had someone really killed Wang Qing? Was the man on the phone the killer? I collected myself and quickly pulled out my phone to dial 911. Regardless of whether the man was the killer, calling the police was the best course of action now. To prevent the man from escaping, I even took out the screwdriver I carried with me and wedged it between the 2 handles of the main building door. That way, it would at least buy some time if he tried to get out. As it turned out, I was overthinking. Just a few minutes later, 3 police cars arrived, along with 2 security guards from the complex. 6 people got out of the police cars. 1 officer, not in uniform, approached me with his hands in his pockets. I was a bit nervous. After all, this was my first time calling the police. You called 911? Yes. Officer. Something's happened in this building. There's a murderer. I just. Whoa. 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 Slow down. Let's go upstairs and talk, the officer said. He didn't question me further but, with the help of the security guards, opened the main door and had me lead them upstairs. The elevator was packed, and I felt much less scared now. I was actually curious to know what had happened in Wan Qing's apartment and who that man on the intercom was. The elevator quickly reached the 12th floor. Stepping out, I immediately looked at the apartment door and saw that it was now closed. Then I remembered something else and looked up at the two corners of the ceiling, blurting out, "The cameras are broken. The man must have done it." Several officers followed my gaze and saw that both cameras in the corners had been smashed. The older officer immediately waved his hand, signaling the two security guards to knock on the door. An officer with a riot shield also stepped forward, cautiously standing to the right of the door. "Hello. Security. Is anyone home?" The two guards shouted several times, but there was no movement from inside. Then the plainclothes officer suddenly shouted, "Open the door. We're the police. If you don't open it in 1 minute, we'll use force." In my mind, using force meant something cool, like kicking the door down and a bunch of people rushing in to tackle the criminal. However, the reality was that a minute later, an officer knelt in front of the door and used a special tool to pick the lock. The locksmith officer slowly opened the door, and several flashlights shone inside simultaneously. The two security guards and I stood at the back. When we saw the scene inside, all three of us simultaneously recoiled and leaned against the wall. Right inside the doorway, a person's head, with disheveled hair and wide-open eyes, lay there. It could only be Wang Qing. The officers in front were clearly startled too but quickly reacted, drawing their batons and rushing in. The lights inside were turned on. The two security guards and I didn't dare look at Wang Qing's head, huddling in the corner. The sounds of a struggle between the police and the killer that I imagined didn't happen. Apart from footsteps, the room was very quiet. A few minutes later, as I wondered what was happening, two young officers came out. They took me to the police station for questioning and to assist with the investigation. It was past 11 p.m. when they brought me to the station. The officers asked me many detailed questions, and I answered them all truthfully, without hiding anything. By the time I finished my statement, it was past midnight. I thought I could finally go home. But then the plainclothes officer returned, and I was called back into the interrogation room. A female officer, who was there to take notes, also came in. She called him Captain Zhang, which made him sound like a big shot. Captain Zhang stood by the table, holding my statement, staring intensely at me. His gaze made me uncomfortable, and I couldn't help but ask, "Officer, do you need anything else from me?" Captain Zhang glanced at the statement, then at me. "Your name is Chen Feng. You're a computer repairman. You went to fix a computer in the middle of the night?" "Yes. I operate 24 hours a day. On call," I said, pulling out a flyer from my bag and handing it to him. "This is my flyer. It's only for nearby neighborhoods." Captain Zhang took it, casually placed it under the statement, and asked, "You said you never entered the apartment from beginning to end?" I shook my head. It finally dawned on me that I had clearly gone from being a witness who called the police to a suspect. Captain Zhang's demeanor wasn't like an inquiry. It was more like an interrogation. Although it made me a bit uncomfortable, I had no choice but to cooperate. After all, I was the only person involved in this incident. No. Wait. There was one more person, the man on the intercom. Thinking of this, I asked, "Officer, have you caught the killer?" "The killer?" "Yes. Aren't you the killer?" That stopped me cold. "What do you mean? I'm the killer? What are you implying?" Still playing dumb, Captain Zhang suddenly slammed the statement on the table, glaring at me. You said a man talked to you through the intercom. Right? Yes. From the time we dispatched until we arrived at the building entrance. It was only a few minutes. Did anyone come out of the building during that time? No. Then why wasn't the man you mentioned in the victim's apartment? How should I know? Maybe he ran to another floor. I retorted. Captain Zhang's attitude was getting on my nerves. And I unconsciously raised my voice. Ran to another floor? Chen Feng. You don't even understand basic logic before you lie. That makes it very easy to expose you. Captain Zhang sneered. He continued. In everything you told 911. You missed a very important point. Even when you just said the killer might have run to another floor. You missed that same point. Do you know what it is? What? How did you get up to the victim's apartment? By elevator. Who pressed the elevator for you? I pressed it myself. Handcuff him. Take him to the interrogation room. Captain Zhang suddenly ordered. 2 officers entered and immediately handcuffed me, escorting me to a room marked Suspect Interrogation Room. I was completely bewildered. Only after being cuffed to the interrogation room table did I angrily ask. What is the meaning of this? Why are you cuffing me? I'm not the killer. Captain Zhang and a female officer sat across from me. He tapped the table with his finger. Don't shout. Let's keep talking. We'll find out if you're the killer soon enough. He said. According to our investigation, all apartments in this complex are 1 per floor. Each apartment's intercom can control the main building door, but not the elevator. That means, to get up to the victim's apartment, there are only 3 ways. Either you have an elevator card, someone upstairs presses the elevator for you, or you walk up the stairs. Am I right? Hearing Captain Zhang, I already knew what he was getting at. Seeing my silence, he nodded to himself and continued. You don't have an elevator card. Going up the stairs involves a connecting corridor. And all the fire doors on those corridors in this complex are illegally locked. That means, to get to the victim's floor, you could only do so with the victim's help. So why did you say you pressed the elevator yourself to go up? And you also said the killer might have run to other floors. By the same logic, he could only go down to the 1st floor. He couldn't go to other floors at all. So, why are you lying? Is it to cover for the real killer? Or are you the killer? It had only been a little over an hour since I called the police. And I couldn't help but admire Captain Zhang's ability. His suspicions, based on just one of my lies, had almost pinpointed the direction of the case. But what did that matter? The police needed evidence to solve a case. I sat up straight, abandoning my previous docile demeanor, and looked at Captain Zhang with a calm expression. I did lie. Wang Qing pressed the elevator for me. I admitted. Captain Zhang's eyes narrowed, revealing an I knew it expression. Honestly, his confident look was really funny. So you admit you're the killer? Why did you kill Wang Qing? He asked. When did I admit I was the killer? I spread my hands, looking surprised at Captain Zhang, who frowned again. I just admitted I lied. Does how it got upstairs have anything to do with the case? I've already explained everything that happened after I went upstairs. Don't you have a technical department? Wang Qing's apartment, the elevator hall, even the building entrance all have surveillance cameras. Check them. And you'll know the truth. Instead of wasting time on me, you should go find more evidence, I said. Captain Zhang was speechless. And after a moment of silence, he tossed the statement to the female officer and walked out. The female officer looked a bit flustered and, after some hesitation, followed him out. The interrogation room must have been specially soundproofed. The silence was very conducive to sleep. Besides, it was way past my bedtime. I closed my eyes, rested my head on the table, and soon fell asleep. I had a dream of my childhood in the orphanage. Every day was so happy because the orphanage had a mother who loved me. I slept very peacefully. Even more so than in my own bed at home. I woke up at 8 a.m. And Captain Zhang happened to walk in at that moment. He stood in front of me, his expression peculiar. I smiled and said, "Officer, if you still can't produce evidence to prove I'm a suspect, then you're illegally detaining me. I can sue you. You know a lot," he replied. "But cooperating with the police investigation is every citizen's duty. And you're the only key person in this case. Of course I can cooperate. But not like this," I said, shaking the handcuffs on my wrists. Captain Zhang then pulled out a key and unlocked my restrained hands. I stretched my wrists and then looked at the laptop he was holding. "Have you got the surveillance footage? Did you find out the killer isn't me?" Captain Zhang opened the laptop and turned it to face me. The technical department found that all the surveillance cameras were tampered with. All video files from critical time points were deleted and cannot be recovered. These are the only few segments of footage from yesterday morning to evening. You watch them and explain each one to me," he said, constantly staring into my eyes, as if trying to read something from my expression. "Of course," I replied. There were 4 video files on the desktop. The first file showed the entrance to the building. The footage showed me entering the building at 10:35 a.m. and leaving at 11:13 a.m. After watching it, I explained. "This is when I went to Wang Qing's apartment this morning to fix her computer. You can see computer repair written on my bag. It's full of tools." The second video was from inside the elevator. At 9:52 p.m., I entered the elevator, and it automatically went to the 12th floor. This is when Wang Qing called me to come check her computer again in the evening. After I entered the elevator, she pressed the up button for me from upstairs. I explained. The third video was also from inside the elevator. At 10:07 p.m., I rushed into the elevator from Wang Qing's floor and collapsed in fright, remaining there until the elevator reached the first floor and I left. This is what I told you when I called 911. You all know about it, I said. After finishing my explanation, I opened the last video file. At 10:09 p.m., I ran out of the building but didn't leave. After lingering for a while, at 10:13 p.m., I walked to the building's intercom and dialed 1201. The video played up to this point, and I paused it. Turning to Captain Zhang, I said, "Officer, this is crucial." The killer spoke. Captain Zhang habitually frowned, urging me to continue playing. I pressed play. What happened next was exactly as I had described when I called 911. The killer's voice was very clear through the intercom. "So, the surveillance files Captain Zhang brought could perfectly prove that I was definitely not the killer. Do you think these surveillance videos prove you're not the killer?" Captain Zhang asked, stating exactly what I was thinking. I naturally nodded. Yes. Doesn't this prove it? Captain Zhang scoffed and reopened the first surveillance video, pausing it at the beginning. At 10:35 a.m. Then he took out a piece of paper and placed it in front of me, signaling me to read it. The paper was a forensic report. It had a lot of content, but I quickly noticed the last line marked in red. Forensic examination indicates the victim Wang Qing's time of death was 12 hours ago. At this point, Captain Zhang pulled out handcuffs and recuffed my hands, which had been free for only about 15 minutes. To the table. He pointed to the time displayed on the surveillance video and said, "According to the forensic report, Wang Qing's time of death perfectly matches the time you were at her house this morning to fix her computer. Therefore, you are now confirmed as the primary suspect and are legally arrested." I paused for a moment, then couldn't help but laugh out loud. "What are you laughing at?" he demanded. I waved my hand. "Nothing. I just find it amusing. You're convicting me based on such limited video evidence and a report. Isn't that a bit hasty?" "Hasty? The time of the crime matches. The victim's time of death matches. Isn't that enough to convict you?" he asked. His self-righteous demeanor truly disgusted me. I didn't even want to keep fighting anymore. I couldn't help but wonder how such seemingly competent but actually useless people became police officers. "Captain Zhang, I've realized something," I said. "You've already decided I'm the killer and you're relentlessly pursuing that angle. That's not wrong, actually. But you're wrong in that you come to confront me every time you find even a shred of evidence. Are you in such a hurry to close this case? Has the beheading murder case spread outside already? Is public opinion spiraling out of control? Are the residents of the dead person's neighborhood terrified? But have you considered that, up until now, there's no direct evidence proving I'm the killer? With such a major case, aren't you going to investigate it thoroughly? Getting some surveillance footage, a forensic report, and then using your experience to identify a lie. Are you sure this is how you investigate cases? The victim's social circle, the killer's motive and weapon, the pale child's face I reported, the man's voice on the intercom. And who deleted the surveillance footage? Why aren't you investigating these things? Why are you so quick to conclude someone is the killer based on such fragmented surveillance footage? Why are you always so hasty? It's because of your haste that a kind, innocent woman died. If only you had been a little more serious, not so eager for quick results, my mom wouldn't have died." I lost my composure. By the end, I was yelling at Captain Zhang like a madman, my voice so loud that the light fixture above my head buzzed. This wasn't how I planned for it to end. But I couldn't wait any longer. I had to use the most extreme methods to resolve this. To give my mom closure so she could rest in peace. "Your mom? Who's your mom?" Bang! Captain Zhang tried to say something else, but he was interrupted by a sudden loud sound. The interrogation room door was flung open, and a crowd of people surged in. When I saw someone carrying a camera, I smiled. It seemed I was right. The more brutally Wang Qing died, the more attention this case would attract. "Chief." Captain Zhang turned to address a man who appeared to be a superior. But the man glared fiercely at him. The chief, probably the highest-ranking official there, walked up to me, his gaze incredibly intimidating. "Chen Feng. I'm Lin Qian, the chief of police. I ask you, how did you get that video online? Do you know this will cause public panic?" It really was true, like leader. Like subordinate. This chief was just like Captain Zhang. Immediately accusing instead of trying to find a solution. Half an hour ago. My scheduled program activated. I had sent the video of myself killing Wang Qing to over 2,000 email addresses simultaneously. The video was a bit graphic. But I believed that among those 2,000 people, some would be brave enough to upload it online. Sure enough, the situation escalated faster than I expected. Would it cause public panic? I didn't know. But I knew that for them to deal with the impact of this incident, the case would have to be tried publicly. Lin Qian was silent for a moment. Then frowned and asked, "Why did you do this?" "You'll know the reason during the public trial. Until then, I won't say anything," I replied. Lin Qian naturally didn't want a public trial. To be frank, they knew very little about this case. And a public trial would only embarrass them. But they had no choice. The online video had a huge impact. And they had to issue an official statement. Ultimately, the public trial was scheduled for 20 days later. I was also shackled like a serious offender and sent to prison. Getting to court so quickly was beyond my expectations. The prosecutor's office, after receiving the case, barely wasted any time. Perhaps this was thanks to the power of public opinion from the internet. Time flew by. And soon it was the trial date. After 20 days of fermentation, the case had attracted even more attention. The courthouse was packed. Everyone holding their phones, filming me. This was exactly what I wanted. I wanted everyone to hear my motive for killing and the truth behind the case. Entering the courtroom, I immediately spotted my lawyer. He gave me a subtle nod. And I smiled in relief, finally letting go of my last worry. My lawyer's name was Zhao Ming. He was quite young and was part of the court's free legal aid for me. My case didn't really need a lawyer. Zhao Ming was assigned just to go through the motions and gain some experience. He had visited me in prison 10 days ago. And we talked for a long time. During that conversation, I asked him to do a few things for me. Now, it seemed he had done them. As everyone was seated, the trial officially began. The entire proceeding would take place witnessed by countless people, with real-time media coverage. The trial started. And I was unchained by the court police and seated in the defendant's box in the center. The presiding judge first questioned me about the case. I held nothing back and pleaded guilty in court. Just as in the video I released, I had personally killed Wang Qing and brutally decapitated her. Then, at my request, I began to explain my motive for killing and some details of the case that the police hadn't discovered. The following is my complete self-narration of the entire case. My name is Chen Feng. And I'm an orphan. My parents died in a car accident when I was 6. And I was sent to live in an orphanage. There was a child care worker at the orphanage named Chen Feng, who practically raised me. On my 18th birthday, Chen Feng bought me a cake. I blew out the candles in front of her and made a wish I didn't dare speak aloud. My wish was simple. I wanted to call Chen Feng Mom. After graduating from college, I worked for 3 years. At the beginning of this year, I told Chen Feng that I wouldn't leave after the new year. I planned to use the savings from those 3 years to open a computer repair shop near the orphanage so I could see her often. In my free time, I could also volunteer at the orphanage. Chen Feng was very happy to hear this. I think she must have already considered me her son. On May 18th, my shop opened as planned. The shop's address was only 2 stops away from the orphanage. Every day after work, I would run to the orphanage to see Chen Fong and help her care for the other orphans. Among the orphans was a little girl named Wang Xingyue. Chen Fong especially loved her. And gradually, I grew fond of this sensible little girl too, treating her like a younger sister. Wang Xingyue's experience was very similar to mine when I was little. Her parents died unexpectedly, and she was only 4 when she first came to the orphanage. In a blink, she was 6. The 3 of us often went out to eat and occasionally visited amusement parks together. Whenever I saw Chen Fong and Wang Xingyue's happy smiles, I had the illusion that we were truly a family. The days that followed were joyful and fulfilling. As my birthday approached, I secretly made a decision. I planned to fulfill the wish I had kept in my heart for years on my birthday. August 27th, to call Chen Fong Mom with my own lips. However, before that, fate played a cruel trick on me. On August 11th, while I was away for training, I received a call from the orphanage. They told me that Chen Fong had committed suicide by burning charcoal in her dormitory. The moment I heard the news, I felt dizzy and collapsed. When I rushed back, Chen Fong's body was already in the morgue. I touched her cold face, softly calling her Mom. I wanted to cry, but no tears came. Mom was a kind person. She never married and dedicated her youth to the children of the orphanage. She couldn't have committed suicide. How could she abandon those poor children? How could she abandon Xingyue? How could she abandon me? The orphanage director and her colleagues found me, saying they wanted to discuss funeral arrangements for Mom. I refused. Until I found out why Mom committed suicide. Her funeral couldn't happen. I was afraid she wouldn't rest in peace. August 27th. Today was my birthday. I decided to give myself a unique birthday gift. Days earlier, I had already uncovered the reason why Mom committed suicide. It turned out that the root cause of everything was a woman named Wang Qing. During my time away for training, Wang Qing had adopted Xingyue from the orphanage. Mom hadn't told me about this, probably fearing I'd be upset. A week after Xingyue was adopted, Mom, as required by the adoption agreement, visited Wang Qing's home. Xingyue cried uncontrollably when she saw Mom. Only then did Mom discover that Xingyue was covered in marks from beatings, with dozens of cigarette burns on both arms. Mom confronted Wang Qing about why she was abusing Xingyue. Wang Qing, however, was unfazed. She said her daughter was hers now, and she could do whatever she wanted. Mom was enraged and called the police, hoping to have the adoption agreement terminated in the presence of the police, citing the adoptive parents' abuse of the adopted child. But unexpectedly, when the police were questioning and collecting evidence, Wang Qing suddenly provided a video, falsely accusing Mom of child abuse. The video was secretly filmed by Wang Qing at the orphanage. On the day she was adopted, Xingyue didn't want to leave and kept crying. So Mom took her aside and, pretending to be angry, tapped Xingyue's palm with chopsticks. This was a common punishment Mom used when children were disobedient. But Wang Qing took it out of context and recorded it. Wang Qing claimed she wanted to adopt Xingyue precisely because she saw Mom abusing her. After seeing the video and blindly trusting Wang Qing's one-sided story, the police quickly concluded that everything was Mom's fault. They even warned Mom that if she continued to abuse children, they would arrest her. However, The scene of the police warning Mom was also secretly recorded by Wang Qing. Afterward, she merged and edited the two videos, adding several photos of Xinyue's injuries, and posted them online, along with a self-righteous caption. The video quickly went viral, and suddenly, the entire internet was filled with curses and cyberbullying against Mom. Although colleagues from the orphanage and some informed volunteers stood up to defend Mom, it was ultimately futile. During this time, Mom tried to report the issue to the police, but she was brushed off by a self-important officer. The officer said he was too busy, and he had already decided that this was Mom's fault. As for cyberbullying, he said it wasn't a crime and wasn't his responsibility. This officer's last name was Zhang. I will never forget his face. Ultimately, Mom chose suicide to end everything. She locked herself in her dormitory, sealed the windows with children's Play-Doh, and lit a basin of charcoal. The incident did indeed end with Mom's death. But for me, it was far from over. On August 27th, at 10:20 a.m., I finally got my turn with Wang Qing. She called me to her place. If you're asking what kind of turn it was, I can tell you responsibly, it was for a physical transaction. Wang Qing, a woman who appeared glamorous on the surface, was secretly engaged in disgusting prostitution. Because of her looks and figure, her business was excellent. So much so that even though she was expensive, you had to wait in line. And the reason she adopted Xinyue was simply to satisfy her twisted psychological needs. After being abused and tormented by her clients, she would take it out on Xinyue. When I first discovered all this, I thought about calling the police. This was clearly illegal and criminal. But the pain in my heart wouldn't allow me to simply call the police. I wanted Wang Qing to pay. And I wanted that irresponsible police officer to pay. I wanted to use the most extreme method to get justice for Mom and Xinyue. At 10:35 a.m., I arrived at Wang Qing's apartment, carrying a backpack labeled computer repair. Her apartment was large and luxurious. It seemed the flesh trade truly was profitable. I saw Xinyue. She was very smart and didn't let on that she knew me. Seeing the fresh injuries on her body, my heart ached. Her face was made up with makeup. So pale. Like a ghost. Wang Qing said it was her sick humor. I smiled and told her, I have a sick humor too. Do you want to try it? Wang Qing lit a cigarette, looked me up and down, and said 3 words. It'll cost extra. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Then pulled out a wad of cash and threw it at her feet. Her attitude instantly changed. And she happily said she would grant any request. She had promised me. But when I put the axe to the back of her neck, she cried and begged me to spare her. I like to chop off people's heads. That's my sick humor, I said. She said she had changed her mind. But it was useless because she had already taken the money. This had to be done. My story was finished. The entire courtroom was silent. I turned to look at the spectators. Captain Zhang was sitting in a corner, staring intently at me. He suddenly raised his hand and stood up, saying to the presiding judge, Your Honor, I object. Everything he just said is his personal statement and completely unreliable. It cannot be used as evidence. In what capacity do you object? The presiding judge asked. I am the police representative, Captain Zhang replied. As Captain Zhang's words fell, a commotion immediately broke out among everyone present. Isn't he that police officer from the video? I think so. The one who blamed that woman named Chen Fong. I have the original video here. Look. It's him. It's him. Listening to the crowd's murmurs, I almost laughed. He was so eager to stand up. I wondered why. Gavel pounding. Silence. The police representative has no right to debate in this trial for now. Please sit down. I could tell that the presiding judge's gaze towards Captain Zhang was not friendly. Although Captain Zhang had no right to debate, he had already raised the issue. The presiding judge now followed up, asking me, Chen Fong, regarding what you just stated, can you provide direct evidence? Of course, I said, turning to Zhao Ming. He nodded, then stood up and addressed the presiding judge. Your Honor, I have several surveillance videos here that can prove everything my client stated is true. I request to display them publicly. Granted, the judge said. The surveillance videos in Zhao Ming's hand were, of course, given to him by me. It was a compilation of all the truth. The video began to play, and all the live cameras in the courtroom focused on the screen. The first scene was from Wang Qing's apartment. Starting from the moment she first brought Xinyue home. The footage clearly showed the origin of every injury on Xinyue's body. Wang Qing's unbearable insults echoed throughout the courtroom. The second scene was still from Wang Qing's apartment cameras. It showed Wang Qing opening the door to greet clients. Although the bedroom wasn't filmed, with dozens of men entering and leaving every day, even an idiot could tell Wang Qing was running an illicit business. The third scene was when Captain Zhang arrived to handle the case. His negligent law enforcement attitude was exposed for all to see. He even showed annoyance towards Chen Fong's plea. Captain Zhang was mortified and tried to leave the courtroom but was stopped by the court police. No one may leave during the trial. The subsequent surveillance footage was of me. From when I killed Wang Qing to the terrifying spectacle I staged that night. Several surveillance scenes were displayed consecutively, without any editing. All the details the police hadn't discovered were revealed one by one. At 9:50 p.m., I pretended to be talking on the phone at the building entrance. It was Xinyue who opened the main door for me. The horrifying scene upstairs was also staged with Xinyue's cooperation. She stood beside Wang Qing's head, showing no fear. Actually, I didn't want her involved. But when I was about to send her away, she said to me with red eyes, very seriously, "Brother, I want to do something for Chen Fong, too." At this moment, everything ended. I was happy because with the video made public, Mom was cleared. She no longer had to leave with the stigma of being labeled a child abuser. And I, the villain, would finally be punished. Due to the unique nature of the case, I was not sentenced at the first trial. While awaiting the second trial, Zhao Ming visited me several times in prison. He told me that regardless of whether I was sentenced to death or life imprisonment, there would be a mandatory appeal, and he would still be my defense lawyer. He wanted to help me, to give me another chance to see the world. Actually, I inwardly refused. What was the point of living without Mom? However, he eventually convinced me, because his last visit brought Xinyue. Besides that, Zhao Ming also brought me news. Captain Zhang had been completely dismissed from the police force due to his work attitude and conduct. And the chief, Lin Qian, was reportedly under investigation for corruption. This made me even more certain that evil would eventually be judged by society. The second trial began. I sat silently in the defendant's box. Zhao Ming, on the other hand, was like an unbridled stallion, passionately arguing in the courtroom. The final verdict indeed surprised me. I was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Moreover, if I behaved well during my incarceration, there was a very high chance of early release. Afterward, Zhao Ming said that the reason for such a lenient sentence was largely thanks to Chen Feng. My mom. Mom became a child care worker at the orphanage when she was 24. She diligently worked for 19 years until her death. During that time, she cared for over 2,700 orphans, 20% of whom had physical or intellectual disabilities. Child care workers at the orphanage came and went, but only Mom persevered. She remained unmarried, fearing her work would burden a family. Mom's story was shared online by someone with good intentions. Countless people began to praise Mom's greatness from their moral high ground. Many of these same people had previously criticized and cursed Mom. They were like moss growing on a wall. Truly disgusting. She dedicated so many years, only to be called great after her death. Sadly, Mom couldn't hear it. This belated greatness was unwanted. Outside the courthouse, I saw Xinyue. I also saw the orphanage director and staff with many children. Xinyue ran over, crying, and told me she had changed her name. Changed her name? What new name does our little Xinyue want? I knelt down and asked her. The court police didn't stop me. From now on, I'll be Chen Xinyue. The same last name as Chen Feng. Mom. And big brother. That way, we'll be a family. Seeing Xinyue's serious expression, my eyes suddenly welled up. Yes. We all shared the surname Chen. We were a family. Aunt Chen Feng is our mom too. We're all a family. Yes. Yes. I love Chen Feng. Mom. Too. Looking at the adorable children in front of me, I could no longer control my tears. At this moment, I finally understood what Mom had once said. Until a new mother's love appears, I am everyone's mother. This isn't just a job. It's a responsibility. Tears blurred my vision. I seemed to see Mom in the crowd. She smiled, waving goodbye, and left with a look of relief. The whole story is complete. Thank you for your support.